Our last session is India Innovation Going Global. India is now the fifth global economy with a GDP of 4.2 or $4.3 trillion. And according to our session before, according to Mohandas Pai, the ability to grow at about 10 to 11%. As he said, India will not be China in the next few years. India will not be the US in the next few years. But India should be India full potential. It has a massive talent pool, 10 million graduates a year, lowest manufacturing costs in the world, cost-effective innovation. Indian startups are leveraging fine technologies, coming up with products and services, competing on the global market. Who doesn't use software, an online software made in India, or things like that? We are going to talk about why this is the moment. And we are going to feed on their experiences, hopefully giving you insights about your own companies, and hopefully having very clear messages and very clear recommendations as to how they can do their jobs even better and be even more successful. To do this, we have Anandkumar, who's the CEO and Managing Director of Bugworks. Hareesh Chandrasekar, who is the co-founder and CEO of Agnit Semiconductor. Mudit Dandwate, who is the co-founder and CEO of Dozee. And Ramachandrappa, who is the founder of Fermbox. I'm going to start by asking them one by one to introduce themselves and to tell us, I'm sorry I'm bothering your conversation, but if you don't mind, we'll keep this one. I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves and to tell us very quickly, to highlight 3 or 4 of the main success factors that have allowed them to go global and be successful at it. Should I start with you, Anand? Do you want me to start with Subbu? I'll start with Subbu. Okay, you know what?
I'll go for it, yeah? Great.
Yes.
Thank you, Eyal. Such a pleasure to be here. And Claude, wonderful to see you. Always good to be here. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Anand with a company called Bugworks that's based in Bangalore and the US. We are inventing a new antibiotic to go after very tough superbugs. And we also have a cancer drug discovery program. Very quickly, my background is actually in semiconductors, so it's nice to see a fellow semiconductor person here. I used to be a computer chip designer in the US before I moved back to Bangalore some 25 years ago. And my journeys have seen me. I had the fortune of working with 2 large industries in India, and I'm one of the co-founders of the Indian semiconductor industry. And along with Subbu and others, I'm also involved with the Indian Biotech Association. So it's a great opportunity to work with 2 very important high IP areas. To the question that you asked, with Bugworks, what we did was we realized that the world needed a new class of antibiotics. We realized that India is the place to do it for a couple of reasons. One is we have the worst problem with abuse of antibiotics, superbugs, etc. So sometimes when you can do contextual innovation and solve the problem in the area where the problem is the worst, there is a good chance that that solution will work for the rest of the world. So in our case, because clinicians all over the country are struggling with patients whom they cannot save because the antibiotics don't work, it's drug resistant. We were able to get the worst superbugs from India. The talent pool of working with clinicians, clinical microbiologists, some folks from the drug discovery space is second to none. And $1 goes a long way. You know, we have raised about $40 million to date. To do what we have done, if I was sitting in Boston, we would have raised somewhere around $350 to $400 million. So it's 1/8. At the same time, this is not cheap innovation or some low cost body servicing. This is actual creating IP, world-class IP from India. So working from India, creating a contextual solution that's affordable, accessible for the whole world, because affordability and accessibility gets intertwined with innovation. And I love that, where innovation, affordability, and accessibility can all come together, and India allows you to do that and create solutions for the world. If you look at UPI, that everyone in India uses, is going around the world. If you look at the vaccine story that we created post-COVID, or the entire digital stack that India has created, it's working for billions of people at affordable areas. So do innovation, make huge difference to society, solve unsolved problems from India for the world with a global context is what has been good. Of course, we'll talk about challenges. There are plenty of challenges, but I think the time is perfect right now with India's demographics, support from government, local ecosystems happening, which we didn't have 10 years ago. Karnataka being one of the best innovation ecosystems. The timing seems right. We'll come to challenges later.
We'll talk about the timing in a minute. Hareesh,
Sure,
your turn.
thanks. I'm Hareesh. I'm the CEO of a company called Agnit Semiconductors. Agnit is India's first gallium nitride semiconductor product company, and they are all important words. So, today you'll find gallium nitride in your fast chargers, which I'm sure every single person in the room has, right? So that's what Agnit does, and Agnit makes gallium nitride semiconductor components. I frequently joke we are one of the few startups in the country which is also foolhardy enough to attempt semiconductor manufacturing. So India has historically been known as a very strong design player in semiconductors, but now a lot of manufacturing related IP is also being built. Right? So what have we learned in terms of going global? Especially, I think that I would break it down along three fronts, right? So firstly is the technology, right? So for example, it's not easy to make a semiconductor component from scratch. And we start by making our own materials. We have the entire semiconductor manufacturing know-how to convert those materials into components that can go into eventual systems. So that is, a high watermark in terms of IP that you need in order to even do this, right? So that's number one. So we are innovating based on technology. Point number two, just to riff off something that Anand said, the talent here is, incredible, right? So what that actually allows you to do is to do development as well as production on a scale and speed. That is something that is probably not going to happen within established systems. And just to give you one example, we recently were working with a global company, one of our global customers, and they wanted a new, material solution to be developed for them. And we could do that in 3 weeks flat. And I think that's, pretty fast by any standards, right? So the kind of depth of talent that we have here in India is quite unimaginable. And I think that with the right amount of training, people do ramp up fairly quickly. And lastly, it's a question of timing as well. So I'm talking about semiconductors sitting in a post-COVID world, right? So where things like global supply chains, the whole geopolitics plus semiconductor angle coming in, China plus one, right? People are looking for more secure, reliable, local or friend source supply chains as well. And this is not a development that you could really, I wouldn't say it's a once in a lifetime sort of a development. These things happen in cycles. But I think we happen to be on the cusp of one such cycle. So the timing is also right. So to put it, very simply, it's technology, talent, and timing. So I think all three have met, at least as far as our sector is concerned and as far as India is concerned.
Thank you. Mudit?
Hi, I'm Mudit. I'm co-founder and CEO of Dozee. Dozee is arguably world's leading contactless remote patient monitoring company. Why we started Dozee or what Dozee does? So Dozee, as we know, patient monitoring is restricted even till date till pretty much the ICU beds, which is just the 5% of the beds. Our idea was simple. We are in 21st century. Every bed should be monitored continuously, right? If 95% of the beds are being monitored manually by nurse every 4 to 6 hours, I think we are doing something wrong. By background, I am a race car engineer. So I used to design systems to monitor in microseconds every smallest of details of a race car. The quest was simple, that if we can do something similar for human health, we can do so much more, right? We can save so many lives, which was there. Now we have even quantified how much we can save that and how much are we saving as well. And that is exactly how Dozee started, right? So from the race cars, monitoring of the race cars, to now the patient beds. In last 3 years or so, we have very clearly dominated the India market. We are present in all the leading hospitals in the country today, with every bed being monitored by Dozee. About year and a half back, we also got our FDA, and from there, we started our journey in the United States in transition care with a focus to reduce the cost of care over there. And the results are pretty promising. We are reducing the code blue events by almost 80%. We are reducing the cost of nursing by nearly around 20%, which is the biggest, one of the biggest pain points of all the global economies out there, including India as well. But so on and so forth. And I think what we did right, answering your question, identifying a global real world problem, trying to find very basic solutions for it, which at scale we were able to test in India. And when it worked in diversity of India, we were very confident that this will work in the world as well. And of course, as my co-panelists have already highlighted, one of the leading reasons for why we had been able to do at cost that we had able to deliver at almost 1/8 that Anand mentioned was because of the sheer talent which is available in the country and the hunger which is there in the country as well to do something and mark something on the global stage. I think we leveraged that. So yeah.
Thank you. Subbu?
Thank you very much for having me here. Myself, Subbu, I'm building a company called Fermbox Bio. We believe we are going to ferment the future. Prior to this, I had another venture which I ran for more than 20 years. It was called Richcore Life Sciences. We became globally one of the best animal-free proteins company for biopharma and cell culture. We also became a place to go to scale up new technologies like smart proteins, novel proteins, etc. And at Fermbox, we are focusing on producing materials which we currently consume and come from plants, animals, or chemistry. We believe that the future will not be the same, and the next 100 years would be dominated by biotech innovation, especially for things like we need every day, like toothpaste or clothes or colors or flavors or dyes or food. Most of this will be fermented like beer in tanks, and by using nature's materials like bacteria, fungus, algae, or many other things. So I left the antibiotics for Bugworks, and we are still working with the bugs to make stuff that you and I need every day from when we wake up till we sleep. So we are more or less an alternative source for agriculture, for animal products, as well as for those which come from chemistry. So we are a fermentation company, and we're based in Bangalore.
Thank you. I want to move now to the why now? Why is this an inflection point? Why is this an opportunity for Indian companies? What are the competitive advantages that Indian startups going global can leverage? And what can founders such as yourselves, beside making your companies even more successful, what can you do to feed that momentum and sustain it? And in a second part, we'll do that first, and then we'll talk about the obstacles and the headwinds and what you need. But give me, I'll start with you, Subbu, because I know you have some thoughts about the why now.
I think to start with, I think we all understand the meaning of convergence. Right? When two forces come together, that can be destructive or extremely powerful. I think in India, multiple forces have come together. For instance, infrastructure. We're just beginning to have the biggest network of roads, high-speed trains, so there's infrastructure. Two, there's talent, immense talent. Now you could have a lot of talent, but does that talent have courage? In fact, India is now seeing the surge of entrepreneurship. There is no fear among Indians. And now they're ready to fail making products that they have. So talent is not just talent like body shops anymore. These are leaders, they are entrepreneurs, and you're seeing many of us here. The third is policy. The government is no more hiding. They're actually engaging more closely with the industry to say, hey, how can we be competitive? And thirdly, if not the least, investors are looking at India to be a big opportunity, India to be a big market, which we are, like probably 1/3 in no time from now. And that means that if you build products for India, you're already competitive for the world because we are crazy about value for money. Most times Indian products get confused to be cheap, but I don't think that's true anymore. Indians want high quality products, may it be our digital payment systems or anything that India is doing at scale. What you will see is frugal innovation, which is happening because of the talent, the infrastructure, the opportunity, and the cost consciousness of India, which is kind of self driving low cost innovation, but high quality product. I don't see any Indian who's okay with like a cheap product or a faulty product anymore. Right? We wouldn't buy an iPhone if it didn't work like it should have. So that's the change that we see in India. And then the buoyancy of the government today to actually engage with industry is actually changing the game. Yes, little sluggish, little challenging, which we'll talk about later, but this is actually changing the mindset. Going global, as Mr. Mohandas Pai may have mentioned earlier, is not about export sales alone. It's about the brand of India. It's about creating the credibility. For too long, India were still considered to be the land of rope tricks and snake charmers. I think that's changed. I think Indian diaspora all over the world, leading corporate America into a great extent, has changed the perception that, hey, look, these Indian guys may have something in them. And I think we are riding that wave. The shift in mindset, the confidence, and coming together of the market opportunity is making India a very powerful and a compelling story to back. I think investors are not missing out, and you see the high level of FDIs coming in for the same reason. And that's what I feel is triggering us towards high quality growth, deep technologies like all four here, because we believe solving for India will solve for the world. And that's what I think is why now.
Thank you. Do you have views to add to the why now moment before I move to the headwinds? You do?
Go ahead, please. Just to add on, I think he said it beautifully. Just to add on, I think a couple more things why I think it's a phenomenal opportunity for India. It starts with the fact that geopolitically, there is no better country to go to than India. You look at what is happening, whether it's the Europeans or the United States, whoever, they're very comfortable working with India because we cause the least problems in the world. Whether it's military, whether it's intellectual property, whether it's racism, what have you. I find in most of the talks I go to, right, whether it's the UN or the WHO, they're very happy to work with Indian entrepreneurs. This wasn't the case, Subbu, even 10 years ago, right? Because they know we're not here to create problem. We're here to create value, and we're not going to steal anybody's IP, okay? So, second thing is scale. They look at India for scale. What we did with 2 billion vaccines during COVID, what we did with UPI, etc. They realize that if you need scale, you're not going to find it in Switzerland. You may find capital in Switzerland, but you may not find scale in many of these countries. So I think just to add on to what he said without repeating points, we are placed perfectly geopolitically, and the fact that we have proven ourselves in producing scale at high quality. And my last point is, in innovation, if something works in India, it's got a great chance to work elsewhere. So this is a perfect proof of concept, of proof of principle region.
Mudit, you want to add something?
Very small point. I think both of them have covered everything very beautifully. Just want to add one more dimension. So I think something that really differentiates humans, right, is consciousness, right, in general. And one thing which is the biggest capital, I believe, of India is India is a spiritual land of the world, I would believe, right, with being one of the oldest civilizations. And that is one extra dimension that India adds to certain extent when, I think when India innovates, it innovates with a purpose. It innovates also with everything that, Subbu and Anand put together over there, right? So that's why I think it has very high chances of working everywhere for the human civilization. So yeah.
Hey, one last thing. So I think that primarily there's this shift that we also see, right, in the Indian economy, moving away from being of a more, let's say, services-based sort of system, right? So where you had you have Indian companies which are global companies, global in scale in terms of offering software services. Same goes with the semiconductor sector as well, where you had historically had global capability centers. So people coming here, external companies coming here, putting up capability centers because the talent availability was good. And we are slowly moving away from that kind of a model to owning the IP that we create in India and developing solutions globally. And that kind of IP driven model is also kind of evident in all of us who sit here and also, out there, right? So that's important too.
Thank you. So now, what are you fighting against? What are the headwinds? What are the things that you would need that are not there to be even more successful, to go even more global? Anand, I know you have thoughts about that.
Right. Yeah, so it's good to stay humble, and we have lots of issues to deal with, particularly where folks like, say, Subbu and I we come from the biotechnology, life sciences space. One of the biggest stumbling blocks of that industry is regulation. And, Yael, it's really sad that we are probably, I'm so sorry to make this comment, we're almost a generation behind China in terms of a regulatory resilience and flexibilities. And that's true of satellite communication, of medical devices, of many spaces. But we are struggling to get regulation correct. We talk a lot to the ministers, to everyone, but the regulatory paradigm has to change in India. Number two, we spend less than 1% on R&D. We are the lowest spenders in the top 20 countries of the world as a percentage of our GDP for R&D. All of us still do what we do with a stretched rupee or a stretched dollar, but we need to be somewhere around 6% and we are less than 1%. So, we have to be honest about these facts that for a country of our almost, fourth largest GDP, we need to be spending much more on R&D. The other important thing is for innovative intellectual property companies like mine, if I was sitting in the Bay Area or Seattle or London or Boston, typically you get acquired by a large company or you get into a collaboration deal with a large company. We don't have that ecosystem developed yet, where the large companies come in and work with the small companies, fund them, collaborate with them, acquire them. Those exits haven't happened. So regulatory, large company activity with the small companies, spending for R&D, and lack of any VCs who understand deep science, deep tech innovation to write a check beyond Series B. These are our headwinds.
Just a follow-up question on your last point. We just had a session about new sources of funding that go beyond VC. Do you see a hope in that, or
Yes. I do. I'll finish up very quickly. I see something change the last 3 years. The Indian family offices here suddenly are more interested. Their parents have made money with real estate or IT or vaccines companies. The next generation wants to put money a little more, not just into real estate and gold, but also put it in the type of companies that you see sitting here. Number one. Number two, the big change in India, ladies and gentlemen, for funding is going to be Middle Eastern money. The Middle Eastern money, whether it's Qatar Investment Authority, Abu Dhabi Investment Authority, Kuwait Investment Authority, they've parked themselves in India because they're able to bring massive capital, bring the innovation from India, and this can become magic between the GCC and India region. I see great potential for GCC India axis.
Thank you. I'd like to ask each of you, I'll start with you, Mudit. Do you have something to add?
Yeah, I think adding on to Anand, right? While I really agree with him, and coming from the life sciences and all of that framework, I agree. India is still a lot behind when it comes to the private markets and all of that. For instance, in case of Dozee, Dozee stands for patient safety, right? When we say it should be there, patient safety should be there in every bed. The very thing is not a priority by the regulator, by the payer, or by the hospitals or the providers and all of that, right? So that's literally the market creation that we had to do, and that is against what we had to swim, and which we did. But also one more thing is we are still to a large extent very socialistic in our policy approach. To some level, that shades of socialism is still there. Few examples that I can maybe cite are like, some of these RBI regulations which are there. our own company having a subsidiary in US, but just sending money from A to B, you know, you have to sign what number of documents out there, right? And which I believe is such a nightmare, right? Being an India topco and then sending money outside is just seen, everything is seen with a question mark. And I believe that is what India has to change if India dreams to grow as well. So,
Regulation / bureaucracy, right?
so it's just that, too much of conservatism, right? As in, to grow, you need to spend. To export, you really need to spend money outside India as well. So if India doesn't start thinking that way, how will India grow? So yeah.
Harish?
Yeah, I'd just like to flag one thing. I think Anand has already brought out most of the issues. So I think we need a new kind of funding model, especially to fund deep tech innovation at the early stage. I think that the VC ecosystem, does a bang up job when you've shown some signs of early traction, right? But in order to get there, let's say we have to develop a new semiconductor chip. It'll take us anywhere between, 2.5 to 3 years to do that. So how are you going to remain funded in that sort of a thing, right? So to some extent, it's also incumbent on governments, I suppose, to pick up some of the slack. I don't know if there are other models, right? So to do that, but it's very important. Otherwise, we'll never have deep tech companies that you can write home about, right? So you'll have the one-off cases that you hear about. But that kind of viability gap funding, especially to get you to early commercial traction, right? So that's very important. And whether that's, and of course, everybody would prefer that's non-dilutive, but if the government is going to fund as well, there's no reason for the government to step in and provide that kind of viability gap funding and pick up even equity in companies, right? So who's saying no, right? So that's something I'd like to leave the audience with, right?
Subbu?
I have a slightly contrarian view. I've always also been an advisor to the Government of India for Department of Biotech on biomanufacturing. So I kind of have two views on this.
Bring the mic closer to you so that we hear you.
Yeah. So first thing, from an entrepreneurial point of view, right? We just don't like any regulation. We just want a free play. We just want to do whatever. And we all believe we are very responsible. We all believe we take all the biosafeties, all the precautions. But we are a very complex country. We have different strata of people, thinking, and sense of ethics and governance. Biotech can be a very, very complicated, very dangerous science as well. And there is a risk where without regulation, without understanding how to regulate, if they are deregulated, they are not able to control the situation. So, to an extent, the headwinds that we are facing as entrepreneurs is creating awareness and education to our regulators, which is taking too long, whether it's in the center or in the state. I think if that can be facilitated in some manner by interdepartmental coordination, these regulations can become easy. For example, biotech in agriculture. You're going to have the farmers raising an issue, you're going to have the regulator facing like probably death threats if he gets it wrong. So it's a very complex situation. It's not that simple. At the same time, they've gone so tight that people like Anand can't breathe. So there has to be a room for innovation. There has to be some kind of a process by which you can allow entrepreneurs and innovation to get access, approvals with some safeguards, right? But at the same time, to create that consensus is taking too long, and that's troubling us. The second point is when it comes to infrastructure. Biotech funding is least in India. I think one of the biggest headwind we are facing is, can a company raise 100 million from equity or even through debt to create infrastructure? In India, no. So the government needs to step in to provide people like Bugworks or even if you're doing semiconductors or even for medtech, to create sufficient capital access, which is, can you not underwrite these investments as the government, even if you're not providing, saying that, hey, we can give you a bio bond, which the government underwrites, so that you can go out and raise based on your IP or the future value. All funding in India, including VC, is actually balance sheet based. They look at your past and not the future. This is the problem. And none of the banks in India have any experience at all, forget the VCs. So you're compared to a cement company or a plastic company when it comes to your laws, when it comes to your debt by EBITDA ratios or whatever. So the headwinds come is not just faced in regulation, but also in access to simple working capital, for example. If your product in biotech has a 90% gross margin, the banker is actually going to ask you, how is that possible? Because they don't believe a product can have a 90% gross margin. They think you're doing something wrong and you're shipping money out of India. This is because you can sell like a small packet of a drug for a few $1,000,000. And they're like, what are you doing? Are you moving cash? So the headwinds are not one or two. It's very complex, regulatory, funding. And then there is this chance of something going amiss. So we are in that process of figuring out, like you saw the accident in Bangalore yesterday. There's a responsibility we need to take as well. That is causing a counter reaction for the government to go clamp down and make it too tight. And for instance, I've seen a vaccine company operating on top of a hotel in Electronic City. And the water is going down the drain, and that drain is connected to all floors. So I'm okay when it comes to biotech for it to be a little safer than overtly deregulating and getting into it. This is my personal view.
Yes.
May I just say, because you asked a question in passing, thank you, Subbu and my fellow panelists. You asked a question about new funding models. Folks, those who are working in deep tech and deep science sometimes can need up to 10 years before they see revenue. Okay, this is the new mindset. Not everybody needs 10 years. So if you do drug discovery or sending a satellite up there, it may take 10 years gestation. Most other countries allow such companies to go public on pre-revenue. So Yale, we don't have that yet, and our hope is we're in 2025, by 2030, that Indian regulators will allow pre-revenue companies to go public, so we can tap into the public markets. I'm waiting for the day. Hopefully, hopefully we would have exited by then. But for the next generation of entrepreneurs, the bio bonds that he spoke about from deep tech bonds and the ability to tap into public markets has to happen for a country of our size moving to the world's third largest GDP by 2030. If I can't tap into public markets to create something that is so important to India and the rest of the world, there's something hugely wrong there in terms of access to capital.
It might be a completely uneducated question, but what about crowdfunding related to what you're saying?
Well, I don't know, folks. I think crowdfunding works. Sorry, go ahead. Crowdfunding.
No, that's not available for
it's not available
No, people do some kind of crowdfunding, but it's very small, meager. In fact, even doing convertible notes is very complicated. You need to do a valuation. Even to do a convertible note, what you call safe notes in the US. So the CCDs that you issue has to be valued. It can be audited. So there are again too many regulations around.
Can I add to that?
Yeah. Yes.
It's even impossible to get a grant over there from overseas as well.
Or a CCD.
Even a grant, you're saying.
Even a grant.
Like if a foreign investor wants to do a safe note with you, like a convertible debenture, you actually cannot issue that. You have to issue a CCPS, the preference shares, which should already have a valuation.
The options are pretty limited.
Very low.
Okay. I would like to turn to the audience at this point and see if we have any comments, questions about what we have been discussing. You all agree? That's fantastic. Let me move to my next question. Mistakes. Can you share? Our audience at IGIC is a lot of founder, some of them in early stages. Would you be able to share, each one of you, one or two of key mistakes that you learned from that maybe will save them a little bit of pain and suffering? They'll make others, but maybe if you could share one or two that really made you learn and leapfrog.
Yeah, I can share one which I think can be very valuable to any entrepreneur who's especially raising funds. So first of all, if you look at the media or social media or anywhere that you are looking at, fundraise is being celebrated, right? When you raise funds, it's like big news, you're awesome, whether you're burning cash or you're celebrating it. Like as if you raised $1 billion, you are the richest guy and you're a hero. But the real story is about providing exit. So to
Providing-
provide exit to your investors. It's about raising that money, creating value around it, and returning that back to investors, which leads to credibility for the industry at large, so that funding becomes more available to yourself as to others. So that is one, an important piece. Two, equity is the most expensive instrument that you have on you, right? So when you're raising funds, you have to treat equity as a rare commodity. There's only 100% of it. So most times when startups raise money, they just want to raise the money. So they don't pay attention to the clauses, they don't pay attention to the valuation. You're just happy to take something and walk away, which you can never recover from as time passes. So typically a company to go IPO, if they are doing well and they're growing, would probably need 3 rounds of funding. Each round you dilute like 16 to 20%. So by the time you're in the third round, if you have got the right valuations among you and your founders, the equity is reduced to single digits. Then there's ESOP and many other things. And then suddenly the motivation wanes if your valuations are not good, right? So it's very important as you do your startup journey, you have a clear path on how you'll raise funds and what valuations you want to reach and how will you reach that valuation with the work you do. So don't treat equity just casually. The last thing is a team should be very, very complementary. You can't have 4 of the same and say you're going to build a company. Any tech company being built, 20% is tech. I think 40% is execution. And the remaining is about going to market and building customers and raising funds. So you can't have a team which is 4 technologists equally sharing equity and then not knowing what to do. So it's very important you build a team with complementary strengths. Treat equity like it's the last you have. And lastly, when you raise funds, please understand that you have to create exits. In my case, I did mistakes in all the 3. So one, when I gave away equity to my co-founders, I didn't see if they had the longevity and the resilience that I would have. So those guys quit in between and the equity got stuck with them. And only way is you create value and then buy them back at the new valuation. The second is, I got diluted too early because I raised money in 2008-9 when there was hardly any VC activity. So I gave away a lot of equity in just 2 rounds. That means I didn't have room to build the third round and I had to sell my company when it was at its prime 2 years ago. So I made that mistake too. Thirdly, I have benefited from creating an exit because now fundraising for me is like really easy. I get oversubscribed because there's a history of reputation of having done that before. Though I'm in biotech, the non-biotech investors are happy to bank on you because you created an exit. So if you can, I think I got that one thing right. But otherwise, yes, in any deep tech, I think your journey will be really long. So build a team which will have resilience to take the hits. Because the hits are going to really put you off course.
Mudit.
I think one, I would say, not mistake, but I could have done better is probably look at global market earlier, right? I think we were discussing that, right? So that tunnel vision that happens when you are when you are spoiled with a so-called a big market like India, right? You start to serve that market only and you set yourself goal that, once I have reached this penetration, then and only then I'm going to look out. Sometimes, and again, this is not true for all industries, but at least for myself and my industry, I could have done better had I started looking global earlier.
Harish.
So just one thing. I would say that even in the deep tech sector, I think the focus should be quite strongly on commercialization from day one. You will not commercialize on day one, but you need to have a very, very clear pathway. And that can only happen if you start engaging with customers on day one, not build out the technology for 2 years and then go and talk to people, right? So that conversation should happen on day one. You should have a very clear path as to how you're going to commercialize. And whatever it is that you can commercialize as an outcome of technology, especially if you're building certain fundamental technologies, that should be taken to market as early as possible, because that kind of external validation is extremely important for any company, not just deep tech companies, absolutely any company, right? So I would say in the deep tech space, we tend to, at least I would have kicked this can down the road, but I think that was something that we've learned as well. So the commercialization pathway really needs to be very clear and well articulated as well. Great.
Thank you, Anand.
The one thing I wish we could have done better is, have you all heard the term, don't drink your own Kool-Aid?
Yes.
So sometimes we're in deep science and deep tech, you think you've solved a big problem, I know it all. I wish we had a stronger advisory board from early on who could give us frank inputs and not say you're great. You're great, you're doing something India's not done. That's total BS. Nobody's great, we all make mistakes. So to have a strong advisory board that can push back and question your CSO or CTO so that you don't drink your own Kool-Aid and make expensive mistakes, like many people in deep science do, I think is the biggest learning. Second, and last point I have is your team makeup. My fellow panelists, I echo what they're saying, cannot be of the same kind. Four friends getting together with the same background, engineering or IT, you need to have orthogonal skill sets. And somebody in the team has to have a global perspective. You cannot innovate, just thinking I'm going to solve a problem localized. Please have at least one person in the founding team who's strong in networking, ecosystem, global perspectives, and fundraising. Else, it's hard to survive, particularly if you want to do high IP type of work, as you see here.
Thank you. Do we have any reactions? Can I have a... Thank you. Introduce yourself first, please.
Yes. Hi, my name is Ullas. I run a AI company called Gritworks. We are a startup. When we spoke about going global, and there are multiple ways in which you can go global, accelerators to building teams there to etc. Right? What has been the most successful way for you to go global in terms of channels, in terms of getting customers outside? What has worked well for you?
Who wants to take that?
I can answer that. What works the best is catching a flight and going to the customer, honestly, right? And then finding the way. And in my opinion, that worked the best, right? So just be there first in front of the customer, try to sell your product. That will tell you where you are and what you are building, whether it is even relevant or not. And other things are just facilitators for getting there.
If I may just add on. So we are not into revenue yet because ours is a very long drug discovery. So I can't sit and wait for 10 years. Our perspectives of going global are writing global grants, right? We tapped into Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Michael J. Fox Foundation, Wellcome Trust, NIH. By writing these global grants, one, you get tremendous credibility and people start noticing you in a global stage, right? Number one. Number two, one of us in the founding team was always on a plane, traveling to all the global events on superbugs and pandemic preparedness, etc. So your company gets put into the correct set of people who are thinking about these spaces. So you need to be seen and heard. Not true for every company, not every company requires it. But for us, writing these international global grants give us access to money, networks, credibility. And the second is, we wanted to become key opinion leaders and thought leaders in that particular space. So one person in the team has to spend the time, money, and dollars to show that this company is actually a thought leader. As I said, not every company requires it. We needed this to go global.
I think for us, it was a little bit of a technology related area, right? So because the end-to-end kind of capabilities that we had, actually people just found us on our website, so that's kind of how it worked. So it depends on what you're making. If it's not commodity, then I think that there's definitely going to be an audience, right?
Subbu?
You said you're in the AI space, right? So, like we are a 2-year-old company, we're in biotech. But we received an order for $12 million and we are delivering product next month for about $2 million. We could be doing really deep tech, like in your case, you may be developing the world's best AI to do something, but just see if that platform can make monetization possible with some low-hanging fruit. I'm a little conservative in my business where I say business should produce cash. And while you're solving for a big multi-billion-dollar long-term project, you already have a lot of capability and strength internally to use your infrastructure, your capability and knowledge to make other low-hanging products which can actually give you revenue. Nothing is a better Kool-Aid than revenues in a business. So I'm very clear. How soon are we going to be in revenues? It's the most Me Too product. It's the most boring product, not sexy, no problem. If you have a platform which can get you customers, create a vertical which can go after that and get your deep tech guys to build the long-term product. And if you are in AI, you don't need manufacturing plants, major regulatory approvals. You could make various core products to monetize. As an entrepreneur, your business is to create value, real value, not paper value. So look at your investors who are putting in money. You have a responsibility. Your team, you have a responsibility. Nothing is better as cash is king. I would say monetize whatever you can.
Do we have any other question from the audience or comments? Well, I have one, and you started talking about it because we started talking about it earlier. India is a huge market. So, and you started debunking some myths for me, because my question was, isn't it like, in French we say a laziness pillow, because you have this huge market, right? So why would you go outside? So I'll let you start to get the others thinking, but you had very interesting points.
Yeah, as in India is a large market, but how large is large for you, right? So when we started thinking about it, honestly, yes, we were first solving the India problem, and we were pretty content about that. But there was a point in time where, someone challenged that, why should not we look at the global opportunity? And when we realized that what we are looking at was only 2% of what it can be, right? So sometimes, India, again, it differs on different magnitudes, because India is, yes, big when it comes to population, but India is also not one country, right? You have to slice and dice in different level to see India as a market, like where we are talking about patient safety. It's just the top of the pile, maybe top 5 percentile of the hospitals are looking at something like that, right? So only that becomes our market. But if we move outside India, in US, that's the mandate by the payers, by the regulators and all of that, right? So all of every of 90,000 hospitals and facilities become our market. So that is how it changed for us, and that is how I think every industry is different. But I would love to know more opinion on this.
Anand, Hareesh?
Yeah, maybe I'll go next. So it's a nice pillow to have, firstly. But of course, there is always, if you look at, again, it's very sector specific. If you look at sector opportunities in our case, yeah, India is a very large consumer market. But at the same time, there are also a lot of, electronics which get imported into the country as well, right? So if you're going to be a semiconductor component maker targeting those systems, then you better be where the systems are being made as well. And that could well be that is a global opportunity today. And of course, more movement towards India, that's definitely true. But it is a nice, India is a fantastic proving ground for technology, especially at the early stage, right? So in that sense, it's definitely a very nice market, because if you do, let's say, go and engage with more developed markets, then your product also needs to be in a certain level of maturity and shape before you can go and have those conversations, right? So that is something that India is very useful for. It's a very, very good proving ground for technology, because given the diversity, given the use cases, given the way that people will kind of use it in ways, your component in ways that you didn't think was possible, right? So all of those really help in terms of proving out the technology. But all the solutions, of course, have a global scale.
So the way I look at it is, for us, it's a little different, right? As I said, India has got the biggest superbug problem, right? It's a real market. There are about 300 million people middle class in India. As he said, India is a different market completely. So we go abroad for capital because we don't have capital in India. So the United States, UK, Switzerland, wherever we get capital. But we want to launch the product in India because India is the biggest market for superbugs, pandemic preparedness, etc. And if our product works in India, rest of the world is ready to give top dollars, because you would have cracked some of the worst bacterial problems here. So I think every business has got to mix and match. We go wherever we gain capital, we go wherever we can get the best resources to get a particular job done, and we absolutely believe in the Indian market. I do understand India is highly a value market. That's the public health sector particularly. But private health, there are still paying customers who are willing to pay to save their lives or that of their family members. This is a different India, right? It's a different India. I never thought immuno-oncology drugs would sell in top-tier hospitals here because of how expensive they are. Ours is not expensive, like immuno-oncology. But the fact is, I look at a world map and I mix and match and play a puzzle with the world map. We mix and match different countries for different resources, but the first country we will launch in is India, and hopefully we'll be successful here. That success produces real world evidence. That real world evidence, the Western countries would pay top dollars for. So I think that's the mixing and matching we are doing of the dynamics.
Subbu?
I think in our case, like I said, we make materials, right? It's day-to-day materials, which I'm not sure if you know, 60% of all physical materials in the world we use is from a bioresource. So our market is clearly global. But the cool thing about the India advantage is when you solve for a price point in India, you're globally competitive. There's no question about it. Like, make the same product in Europe or US, it's going to be expensive. So if you have solved for a price point in India, the world is your market. And in our case, what happens is we have different categories of products. There are some products made in India for India. There are some products made in India for the world, where, say, Indian regulators not allowed, say, recombinant XYZ product to be used in food. But it's allowed, say, in Israel, it's allowed in Europe. So you created a price point which could work in India, but you're waiting for regulatory approval. So automatically your market is going to be US or Israel or maybe Korea or wherever else. So based on products, global entry first or local entry first gets defined. So it's kind of more natural. So we clearly know why we are picking a product, and then the market kind of falls around it. In fact, most companies are selling into India, right? But they may buy a product in Germany and bring it back to India because they are the world's biggest distributors or users of that ingredient. So for us, it's kind of, we don't have to think, is it global or local? We have one quality, and it sells in India, it sells as well. The same quality sells anywhere. So one quality for the world means India is really benefiting on cost.
Thank you. Of course, Margot. Now I know your name. Yeah.
Yes, now it's working. Thank you so much for this interesting panel session. I arrived a little bit late, but so I might have missed some insight. But this question is for you, Sir Anandkumar. You said that you are fishing a little bit. You're finding your puzzle pieces all around the world for different resources, etc., etc. Now my question is, with the global tensions rising, and this increasing talk of de-risking from certain countries, how can you prove them? How do you position yourself as a trusted innovation partner on this global stage?
That is a brilliant question, right? So much of tension everywhere. How do you position? I'm sure each one has got a different answer. What we did was, we made United States our headquarters. So I'm a Delaware headquartered company. So the intellectual property sits in the US, right? Why? Because investors are able to value IP in the United States higher than they can value here. So we took advantage of that. We went to Liverpool laboratories that does some amazing work, where Sir Alexander Fleming, who first invented antibiotics, had done work. So we made a collaboration with the world's top lab in antibiotics, so you get credibility where Sir Alexander Fleming came from, right? We're based in Bangalore, so we work with the local ecosystem operators, etc. So we created collaborations and connections everywhere we could for credibility, except China. And I'm so glad that I just got it right. The reason we kept it that way is when we started working with the United States as a US company, we work with Department of Defense, Homeland Security, Department of Health, etc. They're very comfortable working with an entity that has no investors from the type of countries that are considered geopolitically an issue. You have to play the game. It's very simple. But at the same time, some of our materials, the API, the starting material, comes from China, right? So except for that supply chain, thankfully, great job India has done post-COVID. If we needed so much of the supply chain from China, today we need only so much of the supply chain from China. So you're absolutely right. Somebody in the team has to have an appreciation for geopolitics and how to do this positioning. Not every company requires it. Let's be honest about it. But it's a great question, and you have to play your cards correctly. I have a world map in my house, and we actually have a particular strategy for each of these countries to come together. Out of desperation, not out of intelligence, out of desperation, because I had to go searching for capital. $100 million is not going to happen out of India. So it's going to happen only if you have the right strategy and you bring all of these ideations together. No easy answers, but that's how we go about it.
Thank you. Subbu, I saw you nod. Do you want to add something? No. Okay. I want to use the last few minutes of this session to ask you, what is your next step? What is your next step in the globalization of your companies? What is your next strategic idea? Subbu.
So in our case, we are, as I said, into biomanufacturing. We have to make these products. So we need these huge plants to make our products. Like imagine if we were able to make a protein which is used in food, like say a milk protein, you have to compete with every cow in India. So you need really massive plants. And building standalone bio plants is, I think, a foolish thing to do, because 60% of our time is spent in managing utilities: power, steam, water, wastewater, environment laws, etc. 50% of our capex goes into managing utilities. So the biotech piece is just like 30-40% of the asset and your time. So we decided to build plants, co-locate them where there are infrastructure you need. And I found that most sugar producing countries have sugar mills. They have paper mills, they have distilleries, which have all these utilities. So I built large scale 1 million, 2 million liter facilities. We built one in Thailand in 8 months in a starch to ethanol plant. We just tapped into their steam lines, their wastewater system. So I didn't have to build any of those. And in India, we have more than 200 sugar mills. We have more than 500 distilleries. Similarly, in Eastern Europe, in Africa, in LATAM. So what we're doing is, we're doing an Apple Foxconn model, because these are traditional family-run businesses, corporates. They don't know biotech. So we go give them the design, the build, the people, the training. So they actually invest and build these plants, and we give them a IRR better than their own business, right? So by doing this, they are very happy to build the plant under their nose. They're not investing in my company. They own the asset. They get an IRR for their investment. And they love big capex. So now we are building plants across the world to make the products that we make. So what does that give me? It's asset light for me. I don't have to raise hundreds of millions of dollars to build plants. So I think in due course, we'll make a case for a mutual fund which would build biotech plants. So that's how I'm imagining this, and we want to enable this. So we built one in Thailand with an oil company. They loved the idea of sustainability. Now we are building one in Assam. We are looking at some subsidies from the government to take biotech to the northeast corner where no biotech company is going. So we said, we'll come there if you give us XYZ and allow us to use the utilities from one of the refineries there. So that's our plan. And we want to transform how biomaterials are made.
Thank you. Mudit.
So again, we are already one of the world's most diverse and world's richest patient data sets outside of ICUs, in transition care, and so on. So in past 2 years or so, we have rolled out quite a number of health AI algorithms in a process, many of them in the process of getting FDA de novos and FDAs as well. So want to make Dozee the world's biggest health AI company with the largest number of health AI algorithms, FDA CE cleared, commercialized, do a stellar IPO in India, make that pathway that you can build deep tech in India for the world, and see the growth that you are talking about. Put India on that maximum potential pathway. Yeah.
Hareesh.
So if you look at what we are working on, right? So gallium nitride today enables us to transmit more signals wirelessly and consume energy in the form of electricity more efficiently. And this is the kind of the global macro opportunity, right? So if you look at what we are trying to do, especially in terms of globally, what we are trying to do is co-create solutions, and especially do a lot more collaborative R&D than has been done with our potential customers globally in order to kind of develop solutions. So, this is already a model that exists in the biotech world primarily, right? But not so much in the semiconductor world. And so this is an interesting thing that we really like to do, because we believe that given India's talent base and the kind of capabilities that we have here, this time and speed to market, especially, and the cost of development of newer solutions for this technology could be hugely lowered in working with a company like Agnit. And that's really what we are looking for over the coming few months at least. Yeah.
Anand.
We are hoping to complete an important clinical trial next year in Australia. And then, for us, thankfully, our investors, and I think the same way, for us, success is our innovation going to 8.3 billion people around the planet. So, the WHO has invested in our company, and they have the license to 140 of the low to medium income countries. So, we hope that next year we can do a deal with the big pharma for the Western markets, so we can return some money to our stakeholders who believed in us, right? If you don't return money to stakeholders, I wouldn't do my fiduciary responsibility. And then with the WHO on the table, take this product to 146 countries. And the ability to take innovation from India around the entire world, using the WHO, using the United States government, using the Indian government in ways never done before, will be our success. And we'll feel really happy if this innovation can touch lives all over the world.
Thank you. I will not give justice to this very rich conversation, but I want to draw just a list of advice and the call to action. Focus on providing exits if you're a founder. Equity is your most valuable commodity. Commercialization, think about your commercialization pathways. And in the last three, I think IGIC in very little form can help. Advisory boards that are made of people who push back, that you could potentially meet at IGIC, yes. Need to be seen and heard in conferences like this. And the last one, you said your team should be made of people with complementary skills, and that it should absolutely have somebody with a global perspective and a global outlook on the market. Again, that's where IGSC can come in, because we are trying to link the Indian ecosystem to other ecosystems in the world. Call to action, the regulations issue, the funding, finding new funding models for deep tech and new models of funding, and the absolutely need for India to invest more in R&D. I'm sure I missed a few things, and the discussion was so much richer, but I'd like to give you a big round of applause first. And as we are at the end of this fourth edition of IGIC, of India Global Innovation Connect, I want to call Claude and join you on stage and just give a couple concluding remarks. I just did.
Okay. So, first of all, thanks to the four of you, because it was a brilliant conclusion to 2 days of discussion. And when I say it was a brilliant conclusion, it is not just empty words or trying to flatter you. I thought, listening to you, that many of the things that you said in the last hour reflected a number of key points which, in my view, have made the value of this fourth annual meeting of IGIC. Of course, during the 2 days, we have discussed a lot about AI. We had AI, I would say, omnipresent. But I think what was important this year compared to, for instance, last year, is the fact that it was not just AI in itself and by itself, the technology capabilities and so on and so forth. It was relating AI to the needs of society. It was the notion of how do you ensure that AI is developed. Of course, there is profitability and so on and so forth, but is developed also and used for the common good. And I think some points in the session we had when the title was Shaping AI for Society and Society for AI was quite interesting. The second point, which I think was quite interesting, and again, you were spot on in what you said, was that we are at a stage in India where as India more and more get into the deep tech area, and when I say deep tech, it is, Anand, what you are doing with your company, it is the high tech, which is biotech or whatever. Funding will become even more important because these are areas where you have to invest for a much longer period. You have to be for the long haul. And so I think we had 2 sessions where we discussed about the need to expand new ways, new sources, but new ways of funding. What you said, Anand, about the fact that in India it is not possible to have pre-revenue listing is a big obstacle. In the same way that what we have is that debt-based funding for startups is now banned in India, whereas in other parts of the world, in other ecosystems, this is a way of funding which is gaining a lot of momentum. And so, again, this is another point which I think came in our discussion and you highlighted so well here. Then comes the third point. I think you said that, in a way, explaining the why now, you said there are so many multiple factors coming together. And during these 2 days, we had over many elements of discussion this notion that India is getting to an inflection point. It is an inflection point, which is the result of domestic factors coming together and also the international context, which is very important that you highlighted. And so I think it is important that us in the room, but people in the ecosystem, people in government, realize that this inflection point, coming at the right moment, domestically, internationally, has to be leveraged. And this should not be getting distracted by other things. Last but not least, you highlighted in your discussion that now today, geopolitics become important. You mentioned we need to have an advisory board and we need to have people who have the global perspective. Why? Because quite simply, again, India and the innovative ecosystem of India is getting to a stage where people are realizing that India is becoming a real player on the global scene. So you are not hiding in some place doing your little work together. You are becoming a player where what you do might have an implication in what other high-tech companies are doing or trying to do, or markets that they are trying to conquer. And so you need to be fully aware and understand the global environment where more and more Indian companies have to evolve, have to fight, have to win. And I think what we had this year is already helping us shape some few topics, some themes for next year. So on behalf of my colleagues, and I would like especially Corinne to stand up, I would like Stephen to stand up, because on behalf of my colleague and the tremendous work that they have done, I think we have been able to put together something during this last 2 days that hopefully has brought some value to you. So on behalf of my colleagues, thanks to all of you for your confidence, and really looking forward to having you with us and many more of you with us next year. Thank you so much.
Let me just add 2 things. One, a commitment that you're not aware of is for us to try to do more connecting between this ecosystem and the world, and also to try to keep on bringing new insights that feed the process. I think that's very important. The other thing is I would like to thank again the people who make this possible, our sponsors and our strategic partners. I will not name them all, you've seen them on the screens, but we'd like to thank them again, because I think that's very important. And last but not least, our technical team, and I'd like to thank Vinay, because they've done a great job for us. So just that. Thank you again so much.
Thank you.
And now let's have a drink.
I think we all deserve a drink. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.